What is up, everyone? I am Joe DeHoyos. You guys know me. I would just want to welcome you guys to Beyond the Woodline, the show that explores the mysterious, the unexplained, and the downright chilling. Uh, Today, we're diving deep into the dark heart of East Texas. My guest is Terry Weaver, the creator behind a gripping new film called The Beast of Trinity, Texas. In this movie, a small town comes face to face with a string of brutal murders, and evidence begins to point toward a creature straight out of legend. I got allergies. I'm trying to breathe. As a as a war veteran turned sheriff struggles to protect his community, the line between myth and reality starts to blur. We'll talk about the inspiration behind the film, the challenges of bringing Bigfoot to the screen, and what the people of Trinity really think about the beast that may still roam their woods. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss this. What's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in. I have with me Mr. Terry Weaver. I gave you a little introduction, but if you don't mind, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what was the inspiration behind this film?
Yeah, Terry Weaver, Navy veteran, father, husband, storyteller, author, actor, and I think the inspiration came from a trip to Arkansas. We were going to Mountain Home, Arkansas, and we were driving out there just for a couple-day trip, and we passed through Hope, which kind of is the area around the Legend of Boggy Creek, that area. And my buddy started talking about Bigfoot, and I just looked at him like, "What? You're crazy!" And he was adamant about this. This is Mark, best boy, and this went on for 2 hours. And I thought he would eventually stop talking about Bigfoot, but he never did. And he wore me down. And I think that's when the seed was planted for doing something with Bigfoot. And I'm a writer. I love mystery stories. I love murder mystery, and it just kind of hit me. We need to do something in film. I'd been acting for about 5 years and decided to work on a script. So that's kind of the inception, and looking for a home ground to place the movie in. I thought, what's the closest little town to where I am? And Trinity, Texas popped out in my mind. I've taken my kids up to camp there many times. And so I presented it to Trinity, and they embraced it. And that's when the story started popping up.
Yeah, and you're speaking of Arkansas. I actually did a camp out there in Falk, and it was really really a cool camp out. But I've got a really cool, even cooler story than that. Man, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, my sister called me up. She goes, "Hey, you need to look at Becky's Facebook post." Becky was a young lady that we grew up with, and we known since we were little kids. And so I checked it out, and she said that her mom, who had recently had a stroke, she couldn't really talk very well, but uh, Finding Bigfoot came on, and she saw it, and she started going off talking about Bigfoot as as well as she could, and they were happy because, like I said, she could really barely talk. So Bigfoot, she saw Bigfoot, she was just going on and on about Bigfoot, and she would tell them that Bigfoot would come up to her house at night, you know. And so I called Becky up. I'm like, hey, I said, where's your mom from? Falk, Arkansas.
Wow.
Yeah, and I had grew up with these people, and I just never, ever, ever knew that. But yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. That was a pretty cool story, and the fact that you mentioned Falk brought that to mind. But yeah, so you found Trinity, right, Texas? Did you find reports in that area? Is that what actually got you interested in doing a movie based around Trinity, Texas?
Well, we actually chose that area because I had a little bit of history with Trinity, and It's there in East Texas and plenty good area out there. And they, like I said, they embraced the project, talked to city council and the sheriff out there, and they were excited for the project. That's when I started finding stories about Bigfoot. So I found Trinity first, and then the stories came next.
And so, did you? I don't know. Maybe I missed it, but were you a believer in Bigfoot, or did you just think it was a possibility that the creature existed?
I was adamant that it didn't exist. So when I got these stories from Mark on the way to Arkansas, I thought, "What? This guy's crazy. You know, he's just blowing smoke." And so after him persisting, I mean, this went on for honestly for probably 2 years. Then I started questioning, okay, maybe there's something to this. And that's when I decided we're going to work on a script. And to be quite honest, you know, I think I went through these iterations at first. Okay, it can be a comedy. But I thought, no, we can't make a comedy about this. It's been done. They have a great comedy. And I don't think the people will embrace a comedy, not the comedy we wanted to tell. And then I started thinking, well, I love murder mystery. We need to do a murder mystery. We need to do a small town East Texas mystery. So that's how we got started on the script.
And just real quick, Sharon is saying hi. So
How you doing, Sharon?
yeah, hi Sharon.
Thanks
Thanks
for
for
the
tuning in.
rose.
Yeah. Um, was there any one story that you can remember that really kind of drew you in to the Bigfoot subject?
I met a lady named Monica out there in actually she's in Groveton. Super sweet lady. She's become a good friend. We filmed some of the movie by her business out there, and she told me a fascinating story. And when I heard her story, she was introduced to me by a mutual friend. When I heard her story, I could tell that she believed in Bigfoot. I mean, her eyes were dilated. She was getting clammy. She was getting nervous, almost like kind of antsy, and almost wanted to stop telling it. And I said, "Hold on, hold on. Is there any way we can capture this story in an interview? Just I don't want to hear it now. I want to hear it in interview form. We'll do it right." And because I knew she believed that what she saw, we set up an interview, and we actually have that interview on our Facebook page. But and so it was very close to Trinity. It was in Cheetah, Texas, and I think the interview's been viewed on Facebook, you know, like 25,000 times. You can tell that this lady's legit, and what she saw was, in fact, a Bigfoot. A good friend of mine, Jeff Newkirk, did the interview. So
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And there's nothing like sitting down with a witness and hearing their voice and seeing their facial reactions. And um, I have sat down with grown men, big guys, and they've like cried right in front of me. And it's
wow,
yeah, and it's and they haven't done it for money or for publicity. I've talked to
no,
these people, completely in private,
yep,
and they don't want their name out there. They don't want their face out there. I talked to a guy. He was a hunter. This was like back in 2018, 2019, and that's the whole reason why I went out there. And that's when I got that print that I showed you before we came on the air. But yeah, he saw one out there in the San Houston. And he said, "Joe, I'll never ever go hunting again."
mm,
And he was a big guy, and so it was really scary for him. What's up, Mike? Thanks for joining. Um, yeah. So I know you don't want to give too much away from this movie, but what do you think kind of sets this movie apart from the other Bigfoot movies? And I love all the Bigfoot movies. I'm a little bit biased, but what do you think sets
mm.
this movie apart?
Well, I guess I'm a little different, and most of the Bigfoot movies that I've seen are terrible. So maybe I haven't seen the ones you've seen. This
Yeah.
one it's a high quality movie, and I'm a storyteller, I'm a writer, and I think for a movie to be good, the writing has to be really good, and that's kind of what I focused on first. And we didn't take step 2 before the writing was in a really good place. And so I think the story is captivating. I think that the character work that our actors did, they're captivating. I think the actual beast is amazing. In fact, I know it's amazing. So I would say the movie is quality, and it starts with the story, and kind of ends with a story, and then you build on top of that. And I think our actors did an incredible job in the film. I'm huge fans of our actors.
Yeah, and just real quick too, for everyone tuning in, if you look at the description of the show, I actually put the link for the trailer in there, so you guys go check it out. And the trailer looks great. I was showing my wife, and she's like, "Oh man," she goes, "That looks really good." She goes, "Yeah, we definitely want to go check that out too." Um, so, did you film this on location in Trinity, or was there other parts that you went to?
We filmed a lot of this in Trinity County. So I would say our main locations, Trinity, Groveton. We did some in Crockett. Um, we filmed in Marfa, Texas. We filmed in Galveston. There's a there's a writing tactic that I've kind of embraced, and that is when you get stuck in a story, you send your characters on a trip. And so a lot of my novels, when it starts to get a little slow for me in writing, I'll send the characters on a trip. So we've got some cool trips in the film, down to Galveston, out to well, we filmed in Marfa, but it was a Afghanistan flashback scene that we filmed out there.
Okay, okay, yeah, that's a pretty good area. I've been out to Marfa. Did you look for the Marfa lights while you were out there?
Yeah, I did, but there wasn't much going on, and we were so busy. It was like running 3 marathons in a row. It was all day out there, all day filming, and then all day back. So it was a little tough to do. We did do a little bit of relaxing out there.
Yeah, that's always a good thing too, to be able to relax and get your head right.
I'll tell you one story, Joe, that I heard
Yeah.
that like kind of blew me away. I was out location scouting in Trinity, and I was with a pastor and one of the commissioners who were driving me around the woods showing me locations. And the pastor told me that one of his congregants, this is a guy that's very quiet. He didn't want to interview with us. Very quiet, very grounded. He told his pastor that he was out hunting in a deer blind and that he was literally ripped out of his deer blind and his jacket was ripped off of him by a Bigfoot. Now, that's crazy. Like I don't think that a human could reach up into a deer blind, rip a big guy out of a deer blind, and then would rip his coat off, posing to be a Bigfoot. It just, I mean, that's wild.
Yeah, and to do that to a hunter, he's armed.
Right.
Yeah, that's just asking for trouble. And you hear stuff like that, quite a bit, especially like hunters who hunt at the hunters camp or who camp at the hunters camp. These guys are armed and something's walking around their tent, going through their ice chest or going through their bed of their truck or whatever. You just don't do that to hunters. You just, that's like I said, you're asking for trouble.
Of course, I hadn't even thought of that, but you're absolutely right. Who would go rip a guy with a rifle, a hunting rifle, out of a tree? It's wild. It's a wild story.
Yeah, well, I'm glad he's safe and that nothing seriously happened to him because unfortunately there are stories out there where people do get hurt or go missing. For that matter, really.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And that was one of the questions I was going to ask you too. Did anything strange happen during production? Whether it be in Martha or Martha, I keep saying Marfa, or Galveston, because Galveston's very haunted itself. You guys have any strange experiences doing the film?
You know what? I can't say that we did. It was such a race. Production was such a race. We filmed for 45 days, 5 days a week. Sometimes we had to work a little on the weekend, but we were just exhausted every single day. I can't explain how taxing the film production process is, especially with a limited crew. We didn't have a massive crew. We didn't have luxuries of campers and craft services that took. We did have craft services. We did have verbos, but it wasn't plush. It was a race every single day, and usually we were putting in 12 hours on set. Then we'd have to come home, do some work, and then I would wake up. A lot of the people would wake up early to prep for the next day of filming. So nothing paranormal that I can recall.
And what about actually during some of the shooting? Because it looks like there was definitely some night shooting.
Mm.
looked like pretty creepy areas. Were you guys ever like seriously like creeped out? Like, hey, you know what? Keep let's keep your head on the swivel here.
We kind of had numbers on our sides, and we had a lot of guns. So one of our producers he's a big time gun guy, produces a rifle of his own. So we always had a lot of firepower. I think that kept us pretty much at ease. A lot of military people on set with us. There's a big military storyline, so we felt pretty safe. Um, yeah, so no worries there.
And did you guys talk to any of the locals while you're filming? And if you did, what was their feedback?
Oh, the people up in Trinity County loved what we did. I mean, everybody, and there's still a massive rumble up there. So shout out to the people in Trinity, all of Trinity County. We were really embraced up there by everyone. We had more than enough help to get the project done, and we're super thankful for those people. Really good people.
Yeah, the really good people up in that area. Like I said, I've spent a lot of time up there in that area. And I actually used to go camping in Trinity growing up. That was like our camping area. And then, of course, now I do a lot of my personal research in the Sam Houston Forest up in, not too far away from that area. Um, so since you've done this, I guess you've heard a lot more witnesses, and have they come forward to you like, hey, this happened to me here, or were you able?
Absolutely.
Yeah, were you able to film at any spots where there were actual encounters?
The closest we got was the woods up there in Trinity. So Cheetah, like I said, Cheetah is where the one sighting was. We did film on a property where there was a sighting, but I was asked to keep things very confidential. A lot of these people that have sightings, they want to tell their story, but they don't want to be the people that everybody's pointing at, going, "Oh, these yahoos saw Bigfoot." They want to tell it to somebody that believes and that will listen with an understanding mind. So we did film on a property where there was a sighting, but I've been asked to keep it confidential. So I know there's a famous surgeon who actually requested to be an extra in the film. I don't think we ended up getting him in, but he has probably the craziest story. Now I heard this secondhand, and this is how the story goes. They were out doing one of these Bigfoot expeditions, and they heard knocking, heard the sounds. They all go inside, go to sleep, and apparently this guy, very prominent surgeon, very well respected, a, a Bigfoot, reached through the window and grabbed his arm. Now, this is what he says. Of course, he didn't have a way to film it, but this is coming from a very well respected person. So, and then one of our other location owners has had a sighting, but again, there aren't a lot of people that want to jump up and tell their stories because, one, it was terrifying, and two, there's a lot of doubters out there.
Yeah, and you know what? It's funny. I actually know a surgeon that moved to Texas uh, to research Bigfoot. He was originally from, I don't remember if it was Tennessee or Virginia, but yeah, he had a sighting while he was fishing, and and afterwards he found out that Texas was a very active state, and that's the whole reason why he moved down here. And it's pretty cool when you can talk to someone like a surgeon or a judge or a police officer. A lot of these guys, they're um, I guess just their background in general shows you that they're not the type to just you know uh, have a wild imagination.
Right.
And yeah,
Yeah. Plus, they're very busy. Why would they be making up stories?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, yeah. And they've got this great career. They don't
Right.
want to mess that up. Yeah, yeah. Um, so, what do you think makes East Texas a good habitat for something like a Bigfoot?
Well, we have the national forest out there. The Davy Crockett National Forest. That's an unreal amount of area that's just untapped, and it's thick. It's the thicket. It's the big thicket. I forget exactly how big it is, but it's massive. It's one of the largest reserves there are. So there's no telling what's out there. I don't think people have even come close to fully exploring it. There's a lot of There's a lot of wildlife for food. There's all kinds of animals out there for for just anything you'd want. You can survive out there if you have the instinct. So I think that's probably it. There's a lot of land in Texas and a lot of concealed land.
Yeah, and that's something that I tell people too. You could really just hide a T Rex back there, and no one would ever know it was in the forest. And that goes. And I've been to the David Crockett. David Crockett is thick with forest.
Hmm.
The Big Thicket is very very thick, and of course it's in Houston. That's where I do most of my research. And yeah, it's so thick back there. You could, like I said, you could put a T Rex back there. You'd never know unless it wanted you to know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So how did you balance the skepticism and the belief while telling people this story?
Well, I think that the more stories and encounters I heard, especially from people that I trust, I mean, I've been friends with Mark for going on, I don't know, 10 years now, and he's a good guy. So when he started telling me his story, because he's had an encounter, um, he was just like I said, he was relentless about it. And then as I started to kind of dig into the phenomenon, more stories pop up. And I've heard from people in Falk, another story. This guy is the president of a bank. And if I named it, you would know it. It's got branches all over Texas. He's from Falk. When he was a kid, he had an encounter. So that's a hotbed, but there's also a lot going on in East Texas. It's the same terrain. So I think the more and more I heard about it, the more open-minded I've become. And, that was just fuel for telling a good story.
So let me ask you this. Um, you could have done any kind of a creature, right? What was it specifically about Bigfoot?
I'm sure there's more to it than those stories from Mark because I grew up, I'm an 80s baby. I was 81 and, Harry and the Hendersons. And then I got to see Legend of Boggy Creek. And so there's always been lore. And I'm sure there's some lore in my subconscious, but just the mythical side of things is fascinating. And, all the stuff about UFOs, it's just fascinating. And so to tell a good story, and I believe we've got a good story that includes a mythical beast, it's just, I don't know. I just think obviously, I'm in love with the story. I'm in love with the idea. And it's been kind of an obsession for 2 years now.
And then so like what kind of feedback have you gotten from like your friends and your family, like outside of your film crew family?
Well, I think, the biggest feedback that I've got from people on the outside, people that didn't see what we were doing on set is, wow, this exceeds my expectations. And I tell them, well, it exceeds mine too. You can have a great story, but the execution is so important in film. And I think we were super fortunate. I think we were blessed to have some of the people that we got on our film crew and in our cast. So to have all that come together and, you know, yes, we worked hard. Yes, we have talented people but for it to all come together, I think we've exceeded my expectations. And I think once people see this film, they're just going to be blown away. It's so much better than anything I've ever seen.
Yeah, I can't wait to check it out myself either. Um, so is there still activity that you may be aware of in Trinity, or do you yourself think there's still activity there
Well, I
of
think
Bigfoot?
so. Yeah. I mean, there's stories that pop up all the time. We were up showing our trailer. We had this trailer release party, and I think 150 people were there. And I was walking through the crowd. These are people that I don't know that are coming to see the trailer because they're fans of the project. And there were probably, let's see, there were three people at that event that I'd never met before that had said they'd seen Bigfoot. And again, when these people say, they don't say, hey, yeah, I saw it. Yeah, no big deal. They are locked in, adamant, fully engaged, incredible stories. Now, are there some that are on the fringe? Yes, but I would say that's 1 out of 10 maybe that you're like, "Okay, I'm not sure I'm buying this one." So 10%, maybe not. 90%, when there's 90% telling you their story that seem legit, that are having these physiological reactions, their eyes are dilating, their sweat glands are opening up, that's hard to that's hard to doubt, you know?
Right, yeah, and you've been around actors, and you know that that's kind of hard to fake. So I would say you'd probably be one of the better judges of people who are acting or faking or whatever. And like I said, I've spoken with some big dudes, military. There's a
Mhm.
former NFL player here in Texas that I talked to, and yeah, he wet himself when he had his
Holy crap.
encounter. Yeah,
Wow. Wow.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, so I don't think anybody would just tell me, "Hey, you know what? I peed myself," just
Right.
just for just to
Yeah.
tell me that.
Yeah, and the one really fascinating interview that we got on camera with Monica, she at the end, our interviewer, Jeff, asked, "Well, what would you tell people who are out there looking for Bigfoot?" She looked him directly in the eyes and said, "Don't look for Bigfoot. He doesn't want to be found. Leave him alone." And it wasn't a pleasant warning. It was a this scared, this scared the life out of me.
Yeah, and I've heard that too, and so, like, I don't know if you've done any research with, like, the Native Americans say, "Don't mess with this creature, don't go looking for him, don't look him in the eye if you do." I mean, what are your thoughts on the Native American, I guess, views on this creature?
So interesting question. I haven't thought a whole lot about that. I know that's where the name Sasquatch comes from. I know that one of our important people on the team wanted to include a scene kind of similar, but we just couldn't make it work. It was going to be a Native American Bigfoot like kind of showdown in some opening credits. I haven't thought too much about that, Joe, and I don't want to just make something up, but if they're telling legendary stories about it and these are being passed down, through generations and they still exist today, I would have to imagine there's credibility. Things that aren't credible typically don't, they don't stick around through generations.
Right, right, yeah.
You don't pass lies down to your family. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly, and that's kinda like what I think too. I I don't know where I sit as far as, is this creature a spiritual creature or if it's a flesh and blood. I lean more towards the flesh and blood,
Okay.
and that's just what I think. I'm probably more in that camp, but I think there's probably other entities out there that might, fall into this category. What are your thoughts on that? Is this a flesh and blood? Is it spiritual?
I would probably err flesh and blood. However, I don't discount some kind of spiritual being because these beasts are mentioned in scripture. And I can't give you a reference, but a good friend of mine who has done research on this, who's very credible, has told me the scripture references. I didn't look them up. I mean, it's just been kind of like I said, a marathon over and over and over trying to get this film finish, but I don't discount that it could be a spiritual being. I just kind of err on the flesh and blood because there have been so many sightings and there have been interactions. And typically, when you're talking about the spiritual, there's not a lot of physical contact. That when people have encounters with a spirit, it's not so physical. You know what I mean? Spirits aren't ripping people out of trees. It's almost like a supernatural sighting type thing.
Right, yeah, and there has been large scat found, so I don't
Yeah.
think spirits are out there,
Right.
taking dump. That's just my opinion on that.
Right.
But
Right. Right.
I do think there are probably other entities out there that get mixed up and get lumped into this subject. I think the paranormal can get lumped into this subject when you hear people talking about, they heard footsteps or they heard, the voices. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what's called the samurai chatter.
Yes, I've heard of
Yeah,
this. I heard
yeah.
of this, and I heard there's a pretty decent documentary about it.
Yeah, a gentleman named Ron Moorhead. He's the one that did the recordings. And yeah, it's very strange, and it's stuff that me and my friend Walter have heard before too, out there in the same Houston. We were out. It was late at night, of course, and we heard this mumbling, grumbling sound that sounded like you know people talking in a different language, sounded like they were talking backwards or something. That's the best way that I can explain it. And there were clicks and pops in that little uh,
Well, let me ask
conversation.
you, Joe, because I know you're a huge believer. What is it that's so fascinating about Bigfoot in particular? Because when I ask you what your favorite cryptid is, you said it has to be Bigfoot. So what's most fascinating for you?
Man, that's a good question. I just think the creature itself, the fact that there have been so many sightings and there's never been like that one crucial piece of evidence to say, hey, this thing really does exist. Even though there's been some pretty good evidence, there's been, the Patterson Gimlin film, which is probably, one of the best pieces of evidence that has yet to be debunked, in my opinion. Um, there's a gentleman by the name of Bill Munns. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He actually worked on the first Planet of the Apes back in the
Mm,
70s. He was the costume designer, and he says that you can put a man in a suit, but you can't fake the proportions, like the shoulder to the elbow, the hips to the knees to the ankles.
okay.
You can't fake those proportions. And he did like a side by side comparison, and the proportions were off.
Right.
Um, but yeah, back to your original question. I think that just the fact that there hasn't been that one piece of crucial evidence, and like I showed that casting, right? I mean,
Hmm.
you
Can
can
you show
see.
that again? I
Yeah,
mean, I'm sure you've showed it before, but it'd be
yeah,
good to get our people looking at it.
yeah. Hope your guys are looking at, but you can
Hmm.
see. I mean, the toe is pretty splayed apart. You
Hmm.
can see the creases and the pads, the calluses.
Hmm.
And this is a 16-inch print, and this was found by my good friend Shane Church in Oklahoma.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I told you one of our location owners. It was on this Oklahoma trip. They were doing hunting out there that he had the experience that he had, and that also the surgeon. They're in the same Wood Ape organization, the American Wood Ape organization.
yeah, I'm familiar with those guys. I
Hmm.
know who they are. Yeah, yeah, they've been around for a pretty good long time too, and it's just the fact that there's a lot of evidence, but there hasn't been that one piece, you know, and
Yeah.
to say this creature does exist. Um, I don't doubt for one second that that's a true print, but there's going to be doubters that say, it's a fake print.
Yeah. How well do you know this guy?
Oh, I've known him for, man, I bet close to 10 years at least.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, we've gone out several times together. I know his family, he knows my family. So yeah,
Right.
he's a good guy, and he actually found 5 prints. That's step number 3 out of the 5 that he found. Yeah,
Yeah. Pretty fascinating.
yeah, yeah, for sure. But I don't know, man. It's just Bigfoot's just my gateway into the other cryptids, and has gotten me involved in learning more about other cryptids and strange entities, I guess you could say.
Hmm.
Yeah, and of course, it's allowed me to meet some great people like yourself and other people that are my lifelong friends now because of this silly little creature we know it's Bigfoot.
Hmm.
It's become a pretty good part of my life, and I'm really happy with how everything's turned out. Yeah. So, why do you think Bigfoot remains such a powerful cultural legend? I guess you can say.
So I think there's probably a sociological construct involved. I was at a Dynamo game last night. You go to these sports games and you'll see basically their cohorts or packs of people, their groups, their fan groups, their fan clubs, and people are kind of meant what they are tribes. back before we had big cities, we just had tribes of people. And these tribes gather around a certain set of beliefs. So I really think this is tribal behavior, which makes it sound simple, but it's not. It's something that every human craves. So I have, a tribe of people that I hang out with that have similar interests as me. And I think this is a group of people who have this tribal interest in this Bigfoot, essentially. But this is a part of like human nature. We're tribal in nature. And I think that's what it is. I think there's this tribe that's very interested in Bigfoot, and they collect and they share information and they have rituals. And so that's what I think it is on a fundamental level.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a good way to put it. I never thought about it like that. Yeah, see, that's such a good way to put it. Um, what do you think about Bigfoot itself? Do you think that it's possible that it's a type of a person, or you think it's just another type of a primate?
I definitely think it's like a separate species. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I kind of think that too. I think that they're their own thing. They're their own species, and there's probably other subspecies, and which include things like the Yowie, the Yeti, uh,
Hmm.
the Orang Pendek. I think they're all over the world, and I think they're all different. Um, I think even here in the United States, there's like four main ones. That people see: the more Neanderthal-looking ones, the ones that look like the patty, the ones that look more chimp, um, and then there's the one that looks more like that swamp ape looking
Hmm.
thing. Um, and then of course I think the even the dogman. I know there's a lot of debate on whether or not dogman is actually a canine or if it's a type of primate just with a snout. Because there are primates with snouts.
Hmm.
Have you ever given that any kind of a thought of what dogman might be?
So not a whole lot, but I have another good set of friends who are actually a part of our producer team who have seen what they believe is this dogman up in East Texas. And this was a legit sighting. That you can tell people are serious and being truthful when they give you specifics. If they'd come up to me and said, "Yeah, I saw a dogman on 2836," I'd have said, "Oh, okay, great." But when we're talking about these specific things, it was at this time there was a crossing going on. We were stopped at a railroad. Those specifics. They know those specifics because it was such a significant event. It froze into their mind. All these specifics. So I definitely think that I think there's more than one cryptid out there, and this is certainly a possibility.
And what's interesting about this dogman, and like I said, I think there are other entities out there, not just flesh and blood.
Hmm.
I talked to a realtor. She's out in the woodlands, actually. Her name's Nathalie. I had her on the show, and her and her husband were going out towards El Paso. And she's like, usually we just put a playlist on and we play and we drive all the way out there. They got a little bit past Fort Stockton, and their radio started acting up, and they saw this creature that looked like an upright walking canine.
Mm,
And when they got almost up to hit it with their car, it like disappeared and vanished right in front of them.
wow,
Yeah, that was
unreal.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's one of the crazier stories I've heard. And I mean, they don't, they're good people.
Right,
Why would they lie about that?
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just not a lot of motive.
Yeah, and she enjoys what she does for a living. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And usually like I said, these people aren't seeking attention. They're not shouting this stuff from the rooftop. They're telling you in confidence. At least that's been my experience.
So the movie has yet to officially come out.
It comes out September 6th. That'll be our world premiere, and we're doing that up in East Texas. So that'll be the first time anybody from the public can see it.
Okay, good, good. Yeah, yeah, man. Keep me in the loop. I definitely would love to go see it. And I know it hasn't officially come out. You're getting everything wrapped up. But have you have any thoughts about maybe doing any follow up projects to this?
Well, I've written my next script, and it's not a Beast sequel. It's not a Beast prequel. It's a different subject. So if there's, you know, there was an ending that we actually filmed that we just couldn't get into the movie for a couple different reasons. But I've already got the start of the next story. There's openings for the next story. So I think if the fans demand it, I would love to do something. It was such a blast. It was such a massive challenge. And I think that what we do with the story is going to be intriguing. And I think it will lend itself to a sequel if the people want it.
That was one of the questions I had to ask for you too. Like, what were some of the challenges that you faced?
Wow. So mainly exhaustion. So I was acting in it, I was directing, and I was producing during production. So the production phase is right when you roll the first scene to the last scene, right? So that I think what you don't know what you don't know getting into film, and especially your first film. This was my first film. Now I'd been on other projects. I'd helped produce other projects, but this was the first one that I was fully responsible for. So not only was I having to act, I was having to worry about everything. And when you're the director, you have ultimate responsibility of the project. So I couldn't just delegate thinking. I could delegate tasks, but I'm the type of person until something's done, it's got a little unchecked box in my mind. So while I had some amazing people, had some amazing producers, an AD with us, PAs with us, a very competent acting cast, I was still thinking about everything. So that was mentally exhausting. And like I said, these were marathon days. Typically, we'd film almost 12 hours every day. And then we'd go home and there would be duties at the end of the day that we'd have to do. We'd have to review the footage. We'd have to download the footage. We'd have to feed ourselves, that kind of stuff. And then before the next day could start, I would be up memorizing lines. So it was just a huge mental tax. When it came to the weekends, we typically took Saturday and Sunday off. I was just completely depleted, laying around like a corpse for 2 days straight, trying to regain my energy. It was nuts. I'm not being dramatic. And
No,
then,
yeah.
of course, when people get tired, I've been told that if you feel like something's wrong, if you're having a bad day, you either need food or you need a nap. So on a film project, people are always hungry and they're always tired. And so, especially when you get to the end of the day, so then people get a little inflamed. There were permitting processes because we shut down roads, and we had somebody arrested, not somebody from our team, but somebody drove into the area we were filming, and they almost got arrested because they put up a fight. Anyway, luckily we had some good police officers from Trinity help us out. We had a lot of people watching our back out there. So those are some of the challenges. It's brutal.
So one thing I did want to ask you, and I don't want you to give anything away,
Okay.
but were there any scenes that y'all really like enjoyed, that y'all had a great time?
Oh, geez. I mean, so many. If you ask any member of the cast, they'll give you their favorite scene, right? I think for me, Marfa was incredible because we had this crazy military vehicle. It's called a Hemet, and I like big challenges. I think I'm a sucker for challenges. So, traveling, taking a cast and crew out to Marfa in one day, and then doing film prep. We were out location scouting that evening after we drove to Marfa, and then we were out by the campfire telling stories that night. And then we woke up to film at 6, and we were out there almost all day filming. That's just an experience in and of itself. It's I was in the military and I deployed, and when you go through something very hard together, it creates a bond. And I think Marfa for us was something very hard to do. And so one story that made it really hard is we had a stunt, and we had a stunt that we had to pull off in Marfa. I don't want to give too much away, but when we got out there, we realized we didn't bring everything we needed for the stunt. It was a communication thing. I thought somebody else was bringing it. They thought I was bringing something. ultimately it was just a communication breakdown. But what's cool is our DP, this guy named Jordan Bradley, freaking amazing. He's like, hold on, I think I can build what we need. And so he busted out a YouTube video right there and built this apparatus that we needed for the stunt, and we pulled it off. It was crazy. So stuff like that makes it amazing. That was a really cool night. And then quite honestly, every time that we had, we were filming with the Beast, with Bigfoot, it was amazing.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. One thing I wanted to ask you, so like in the Bigfoot world and paranormal and UFO, there's always people, they always have like their projects that they want to do. They want to start filming, they want to learn how to film. What kind of advice would you give these people on how to begin?
So best advice that I have is make up your mind and start it and give yourself a deadline. When I started this project, I said we would be filming. So I created a timeline and I said, we're going to use this much time to prepare and we're going to be filming September 31st. Basically, we started mapping out our schedule for filming and then we just raced toward that deadline. So I think you got to make the commitment. You got to, burn the boats, as they say, and not look back. If you're going to do this now you may fail, but at least you'll have, busted your ass to try, and you can be proud of that. But that's what I did. And that's what, me and my partner did. And we had some hiccups along the way and we almost didn't make it, but a good person came through. A lot of good people came through, but we got the funding that we needed about a month and a half before we were set to start filming. Actually, about a month. And then we had all kinds of complications once that happened. But I felt like, okay, we've got the money, we've got the cast, we got people who are passionate about this, we can do it. So best piece of advice is make a commitment and go after it and plan and work hard, but do it. Just charge toward it.
Yeah, I think that's some great advice too, because sitting around thinking about it isn't going to get it done. And like you said, if you fail, you fail, but at least you tried. And you
Yeah.
put that foot forward. And I do have another little question for you. It's a little wrap up question. If you had 1 minute to speak to Bigfoot, what would you say?
Wow, man. I guess I would ask him. Well, I would be asking him questions because he doesn't need to hear anything I say. But I would ask, why is he avoiding humans? Like what there must be a fear, right, behind it. So I'd try to dig into his fear, and maybe I'm an empathetic person. Maybe I could just be a listener for Bigfoot. I would assume that he can talk to me if I'm asking him questions or talking to him. So I guess I would try to ask some probing questions, be empathetic, ask, will he ever consider showing himself up, or showing up and maybe just be a great listener for Bigfoot, and hopefully make friends.
Yeah, and hopefully walk away with all your limbs still attached.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What's up, Sandra? Thanks for joining the show. You came in a little bit late, but I'm always glad to have you. Sandra has been with me since day one.
All right, Sandra. Thanks.
Yeah, yeah, so real quick, man, or not real quick, take your time. Why don't you tell people where they can find you, where they can find the Beast, and any other relevant information you want to give to them?
So the Beast of Trinity, Texas.com is the best place. And then we've got a pretty active Facebook page. I think our trailer has been viewed, almost 70,000 times on Facebook. It just kind of exploded. So we've got a YouTube channel, the Beast of Trinity, Texas. Those are the main places: Facebook, our website, thebeastoftrinitytexas.com. And I just want to impress upon people that I think we've been waiting for a good Bigfoot movie for a very long time. And some people have been disappointed, but I think this movie is going to be incredible, man. We put so much hard work and so much money into it, and there's so many passionate people involved. It's really a dream come true. So I'm excited for people, and I'm excited to release this project into the world, because at some point, it no longer belongs to us. It belongs to the world, and it belongs to our tribe, our believers. And there's a lot of them out there. So I'm happy and excited for them, honestly.
Yeah, for everyone watching and just tuning in, if you look in the description, I do have the link for the trailer there, so go check it out. And Mr. Terry, if you ever need anything from me, if you want me to share anything, promote anything, I'll be happy to do it. I've got a pretty good little following, so and they follow my crazy adventures and stuff. So I'll have them go check out whatever you need me to check out.
Well, thanks for being generous, Joe. We did just open up world premiere tickets, so that's available on our website. There'll be more screenings, but this is the world premiere. It's going to be pretty incredible.
Well, thank you, Mr. Terry, for coming on, like I said, and everyone else. Thanks a lot for tuning in. My next show is Monday. I don't know who I have. I never know who I have. So you guys tune in on Monday evening, and Terry, don't go anywhere. Everyone else, you guys, I will see you guys later.
See ya.